Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the insiders. And as insiders, one thing Chuck and I both know is that the office of Attorney General is extraordinarily important in the state of Wisconsin. I think a lot of people undervalue that office, but if you've served in the legislature or in the executive branch, you know how important that office is. Last time that race was decided by less than 1%. Chuck, how would you handicap the race this year in 2022?
I think it'll be close again. Let's face it, Josh Kaul, who is the incumbent, the Democrat, his fate will be inextricably tied to that of Tony Evers. You generally, we're seeing in Wisconsin that these things do follow along a line with some rare exceptions. But I also think Josh Kaul hasn't done anything to hurt himself. He's actually shown some independence. I think people in our state, for some reason, seem to look at these things and see if we can balance out the power. They know that Republicans are going to be firmly in control of the legislature. I think they probably appreciate having an attorney kind of looking over that, who's of the other party. And I think Josh Kaul gets the benefit of that. I don't think he's been a flashy attorney general. He hasn't gone for every big press release, but I also think he's been a solid attorney general. And I think that people will appreciate that. The other thing is the Republicans have a primary going on. And to be honest with you, I doubt that, 1 in 10 people in Wisconsin know who's running, and they'll have to wait until after August to know. And it'll be interesting to see how they gain traction against Josh Kaul. If I had to predict, assuming Evers does okay, I think that Josh Kaul will be right there with him.
Well, I do think it's going to be a close race again. I think you're right about that. After all the statewide offices 2 years or 4 years ago were decided by less than 1.5%, I believe. So it would be likely to have a similar answer again this time. I think they could all flip the other way possibly, but we'll see. On the Republican side in the race for Attorney General, the traditional winning bet would be to have a prosecutor who's tough on crime, who would be running in the general election, and that would be District Attorney Eric Toney. But he has a whole bunch of vulnerabilities in the Republican primary that are difficult to explain. Using law enforcement to enforce, to arrest people and try to enforce Governor Evers' COVID orders, that's a problem in a Republican primary. Some of the low bail policies, that's going to be difficult for him to explain to Republican primary voters. On the other hand, Adam Jarko doesn't have any prosecutorial experience. Normally that would be your ticket in a tough on crime primary. But Adam Jarko, I think, is winning over the major donors and the grassroots in the Republican Party. And that's what I think will end up shaping this race. So I would guess that Jarko has the edge in the primary, and that the race will be really close in the general election. You are right that the Attorney General Kaul has had a lower profile than some previous attorney generals. I think with rising crime as an issue, naturally that lands at his doorstep, and he either has to show people he's done a good job or that he hasn't in trying to fight rising crime, because that's what most attorney generals races end up being about crime.
Well, first of all, we all, those of us in the legal community, and I'm not just one that plays one on TV, I'm actually an attorney. We know that the attorney general really doesn't have, there's a lot of background that he does, and Josh Kaul has done a good job of getting down, for example, the kits that they do for rapes and making sure that those are up to date. But they're really back up to the district attorneys and those people who do it. So, although the public may not see it that way, that's it. But I think Scott raises a good point. We often talk about judicial races here, and it's very hard to win like a Supreme Court race unless you've been a judge. And I think it's also hard to win an attorney general race unless you've been a prosecutor. And I do think that that will be used against him, just as not that anybody knows this right now, but during the course of the race, if Josh Kaul's political people are at all smart, if Jarko's the guy, they're definitely going to use that against the guy. And if that's highlighted, I think that will make it hard for Jarko to be able to win, because without that background, people say, well, really, do you understand what you're doing? You want to be the top cop in the state? Boy, he's going to have a hard time making that case. So we'll see, but he's got to get through a primary first. There's no guarantee on that. In fact, if I'm Tony, that's case I would make against him in the primary. And that could have some, I would think, some legs with Republican voters who are probably even more concerned about with that than Democratic voters. So I think it's very interesting what will happen in the primary. But at the end of the day, I think that Josh Kaul has been solid. And I think that that's what people kind of want from an attorney general at this point in time. And I do think they want that balance to what's happening with the Republicans. I also think they realize that elections and how that all happens, an attorney general is going to be an important piece of the puzzle. So I think it'll be an interesting race. I think there's a lot of fodder for people to use. At the end of the day, I'd put my money on Josh Kaul.
Yeah, at least we agree that it's likely to be very close, as have the last couple of these races have been. And so hopefully people will be tuned in and make the choice that they think is right and best for Wisconsin's future.
See you next time.
See you soon.